And I'm going to mute everybody, and we'll get started with Sal's class here.
Okay. Have you muted everyone?
I think I have, and there you're muted, and now I'll ask you to unmute.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, all set.
Okay. Well, I'm only gonna use one PowerPoint as we go on. So I'm gonna just, lecture a little bit as we move into videos that I want to show you. And so we talked about Lee Harvey Oswald, who he was, what kind of implications there are for him and intelligence. And as we go on, we're now going to be looking at more of what would be evidence. What do we have as evidence? And we'll hear some witnesses and that sort of thing. But I'd like for you to look at this as if you were the project manager orchestrating this assassination. Because I think if you take that framework and you think about that, you want to not get caught. You don't want this assassination to come back upon the planners because it could reach into very high levels of government. So part of what your objective is to understand the law enforcement agencies, understand the pressure that is on them, understand how they operate. Because what you want to do is use that pressure that's on them, the pressure being, we can't have something terrible happen here like we had with Adlai Stevenson, and we don't want to look like an incompetent police department or that kind of thing. So we really want to solve this case very quickly so we get to case closed. And it's important that you understand that as the project manager for this whole enterprise, and that what you want to do is help them get to case closed as quickly as you can. You also, though, want to complicate their response to the assassination and make it difficult for them, throw other events into it so that they become distracted and they can't really think it all the way through. You want them to be reacting out of their emotions, and you want to limit their use of the frontal lobe for actually thinking and strategizing and having debates to try to understand what exactly do we have going on here. And so you really want to help them get to the point of saying case closed. We know who did it. We got the bad guy. We got the evidence. All done. Nothing to see here, folks. And then step back and then think about it from the number of bizarre events that are all happening around this assassination. A police officer gets killed, a suspect gets killed in the police station. We have a magic bullet. We got a bullet that just turns up on a stretcher and it's not deformed in any way. And this supposedly went through two people. And all of this is stuff that is totally extraordinary, but it's all happening on this event. Now, extraordinary things can happen, but when you get one event and then two events and three events and four, the probability of that many extraordinary events happening on one case just isn't plausible. So again, if you're thinking from the standpoint of I want to complicate it, look at it, you can then start to think of things like Lee Harvey Oswald actually may not have had anything to do with this. This may just be someone that they set up to be the suspect and they handed him over. And if that's what you're going to do as a project manager, you sure want to make sure it's somebody who doesn't know anything about what was going on, so that when he is questioned, he can't give answers because he doesn't have them. But you also want to make sure that you get rid of him because of his background and his connections with intelligence. You know that that's going to come out, but you don't want him there to be answering questions about that. So you organize to have him killed quickly. So let's take a look at some more of Lee Harvey Oswald.
On Wednesday evening, 2 days before the assassination, one of the boarders at the rooming house recalls Oswald intently watching a TV news story about President Kennedy's visit to Dallas. That week, Dallas newspapers published more details, including maps of the motorcade route. The White House party would fly into Dallas and drive through the city. The planned route would take the motorcade into Dealey Plaza and right by the Texas School Book Depository. After work on Thursday, Oswald asked a co-worker to give him a lift to Irving.
Thursday, which was the night before the assassination, I came home from grocery shopping and Lee was outside in the yard. I was surprised because it was the only time he came without asking.
And Marina thought he'd come to make up with her after a fight they'd had. He tried to kiss her, she didn't let him. And he said to her that she was getting spoiled, living with Americans. And early that evening, he asked her on 3 separate occasions to join him in Dallas, and if she would, he would get an apartment the next day.
Marina was still angry, and she said no. Sometime that evening, Oswald entered the garage, where he kept his rifle.
I went into the garage and the light was on, which surprised me because I knew Marina was pretty careful turning the light out when she went in the garage for anything. And I hadn't been in the garage, so I assumed that Lee had been in there and forgotten to turn the light out.
Lee woke up early the next morning. Marina was still sleeping. He made his own coffee. Then he kissed his children and told Marina goodbye.
Later, she found what he'd left on the bureau. It was $170, and she thought to herself, that must be everything Lee had. And she found something else. It was Lee's wedding ring, and he left it in a little cup that her grandmother had given her.
When Oswald left the house, he was carrying an oblong package wrapped in brown paper. He told the neighbor who gave him a ride to work that the package contained curtain rods for his room in Oak Cliff. Later that day, a long, empty brown bag would be found on the 6th floor of the book depository. President Kennedy was up early that morning as well. In Fort Worth, the crowds were friendly.
Said that introduced myself in Paris by saying that I was the man who had accompanied Mrs. Kennedy to Paris. I'm getting that same sensation as I travel around Texas.
In Dallas, Oswald's co-workers were eagerly awaiting the motorcade.
We were looking out towards Elm Street. So he walked up and asked us, said, what is everybody looking for? And what is everybody waiting on? So we told him we was waiting on the president to come by. He put his hand in his pocket and laughed and walked away. So I don't know where he went, or if he went upstairs or downstairs or wherever.
Oswald rode the elevator up to the 6th floor, where he spent the morning filling book orders. In Fort Worth, the president was headed to the airport for the short flight to Dallas. About 12 o'clock, Oswald's co-workers went down to lunch. Oswald shouted for them to send the elevator back up. By now, President Kennedy and his wife had landed at Love Field. The welcome was warm. On the 6th floor of the depository, someone had screened off a corner window with boxes. Oswald's prints would later be found on some of them, including the boxes arranged to support the sniper's rifle. 2 witnesses spotted a man with a rifle at the 6th floor window. They assumed he was there to protect the president. Oswald later claimed that at this time he was eating lunch with 2 fellow workers and had then gone to buy a Coke, but his co-workers denied having lunch with Oswald. Some witnesses thought they saw 2 men on the 6th floor, evidence, if true, that there was a conspiracy to kill the president. This film, shot by amateur cameraman Robert Hughes, shows the presidential motorcade approaching Dealey Plaza. Hughes stops filming for a few seconds and then starts again just as the limousine passes in front of the depository. Frontline had this footage scientifically enhanced to see if a second man could be seen on the 6th floor.
Okay, just to interrupt here. These guys are going to tell you that they don't see second man or whatever. But I want you look at all those people who are out on the street. I mean, across the street from the school book depository. Now, if there's a shot coming from that window, I don't know about you, but as soon as I hear a shot, I look up to see what's going on. Out of all of those people, nobody, and he's fired 3 shots. So it's not as if there's the shot, you look up and the man's disappeared. The person's still got to be there because he's firing 2 more shots, right? How come nobody saw that?
On the Hughes film, there are a lot of things to see, and on the 5th floor in particular, we see an employee of the book depository raise his right arm right there as he waves to the motorcade passing just under the building. Now we move to the 6th floor, and we observe in the arched window that is adjacent to the sniper's nest a form that some people have said is human-like in appearance. And when we ran the enhanced film in motion, that human form disappears, and we conclude there is no human form in that window. We do also conclude that there is movement in the 6th floor corner window indicating the presence of a person.
Just 7 seconds before the first shot is fired, something moves in the corner window. In the window below, Harold Norman raises his arm and waves to the president.
We were sitting on the 5th floor, right directly on the 6th floor window. And the shots came from above, and that was a gun. The shots were sounding boom, click, click, boom, click, click, boom, click, click. So there was 3 shots fired right above us, and we were sitting on the 5th floor.
Frame by frame, the tragedy unfolds in the 21 seconds of 8mm film shot by Abraham Zapruder. As the motorcade rounds the corner, it slows. In the background, a little girl runs beside the limousine. Suddenly, there's a gunshot. Governor Connolly hears it and turns. The little girl stops dead and looks around. 3 seconds later, a second shot. A bullet has passed through the president's throat. It hits Connolly in the back, and he starts falling. Mrs. Kennedy turns to her husband. Something's wrong. She looks into his face. The fatal headshot. The exact number and timing of the shots have been argued over endlessly, but there is a growing consensus that the Zapruder film shows 3 shots were fired in about 8 seconds. Some believe a second gunman fired a fourth shot from the grassy knoll. Immediately after the shooting, many people followed a policeman up the embankment. But when police searched the area, they found no gunman, no gun, no cartridges.
And just now we've received...
Okay, so I understand the acoustics that can take place when you have a gunshot and there are surrounding buildings, and the echo effect can make you uncertain as to where the shots are coming from. But we're talking 3 shots in 8 seconds. It's, in my mind, more than reasonable. The people standing on the other side of the street would have looked up to that window and would have seen a gunman from the window. It's just that there isn't any is very troubling to me. Doesn't mean that it couldn't have happened like that. It just means that it's one of those things that I find difficult to reconcile. Let's see some more here. And that's what I should have. I wanted to mention that shortly after the shots are fired, a police officer goes into the school book depository, and along with the building manager, Roy Truly, they confront Oswald, presumably within 90 seconds after the shooting.
Now riding the back trails of Texas, a former Dallas motorcycle officer recalls a remarkable encounter he had within 90 seconds of the assassination. The first policeman into the depository was Marion Baker.
I worked for the Dallas Police Department as a motorcycle officer and signed the motorcade that day. I was approximately 5 or 6 cars back from the lead car of the motorcade. I had gotten about halfway between Maine and Houston when I heard these 3 shots. And immediately I knew they was in front of me and high. And as I looked up, I saw this huge flock of pigeons flying from the top of this building. I rode my motorcycle over to the corner of the intersection, parked it, and then ran in the building, which took me a very few seconds to do this. When I got through the front doors into the lobby of the building, I asked where the elevators or the stairs would be. And one man spoke up, said, "I'm Mr. Truly, I'm the building manager." And he said, "Come on, officer, I'll show you." So he and I continued on to the back of the building and up some stairways at the back of the building to the 2nd floor. As we came out of on the second floor, I saw through a doorway, a window in this doorway, a man movement. So I went over and opened up the door, and this man was walking away from it. And the next room, I later found out was a coffee room.
As seen earlier by his fellow workers, Oswald was still alone in the lunchroom.
I called to the man, and he turned around, and Mr. Truly was there beside me, and I asked him if he knew this man or if he worked there. He said, yes, he does. He was calm, ordinary, you know. He didn't look excited or anything like that.
In order to fire the shots from the 6th floor, Oswald needed to squeeze his way out of the sniper's perch, pick his way between stacks of books to the far side of the building, hiding the gun en route, descend 4 flights of stairs to the lunchroom unobserved, and yet appear calm and unruffled in his encounter with Officer Baker, all within 90 seconds. Less than 15 minutes after the shooting, the police were broadcasting a wanted description that closely fitted Oswald. Who provided that description is not known, but it led to the immediate arrest of Oswald lookalikes, even...
I hope you caught all of that. Because what we're talking is he's on the 6th floor. He has fired off 3 shots in 8 seconds. He now has to get it, and he's behind these boxes that are kind of to shield him. And he's going to now take the weapon and he's going to place it in a spot where police can find it. And he's going to descend 4 flights of stairs to get into the lunchroom. He's then going to be confronted by a cop, and he's not going to be ruffled at all. He's not going to be out of breath. He's not going to be anything. So he's now done this. Mind you, apparently nobody knows, haven't seen anything yet. Within 15 minutes, the police have a description of the gunman from an anonymous source. Again, if you're plotting this, if you're the program manager, would this make sense to you? Is this stuff you would do? Because remember, the police want to get to case closed. So I'm looking at this as stuff that is orchestrated, not by accident.
In Fort Worth, 30 miles away.
Attention all squad. The suspect in the shooting at Elm in Houston is reported to be an unknown white male, approximately 30, slender build, height 5 feet 10 inches, weight 165 pounds, reported to be armed with what is thought to be a 30 caliber rifle.
Meanwhile, the real Oswald had made his way to a taxi rank a short distance from the depository, and after politely offering the first cab in line to another passenger, had asked to be driven to the street where he lived in Oak Cliff. At his lodgings, he rushed to his room, collected a jacket and revolver, and was last seen by his landlady shortly after 1 p.m., standing at the bus stop outside 1026 North Beckley. A mile from Oswald's rooming house, in another part of Oak Cliff, a further drama was unfolding. Waitress Helen Markham, on her way to work, was about to become the principal witness to a brutal slaying.
I was standing here on this corner when waiting on the traffic to pass so I could go down there and catch my bus to go to work. And a man come walking down the sidewalk, and a policeman came, and I could not get across.
The policeman in a patrol car was Officer J.D. Tippett. According to Helen Markham's account, Tippett stopped his car and got out to continue his conversation with the man on the sidewalk.
Just as the policeman got in front of the hood of the car, that man shot him 3 or 4 times. And then he put his gun back in his pants. He run over here, and I put my hands, I seen him coming, I just put my hands up on my face like this. I waited for a few minutes, and I opened them up, and I pulled them down. And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and I never said a word. And just like a flash of lightning, with big glassy eyes, he run off across the field, out that lot there, down, right across there, went over the fence and down the alley.
With Helen Markham, car dealer Ted Calloway was to become a principal witness for the Warren Commission. At a police identity parade later that day, they both picked out Lee Harvey Oswald as the killer of Officer J.D. Tippett.
I was sitting in my office when I heard what sounded to be 5 pistol shots coming from behind my office in the direction of 10th Street. Well, I jumped up, ran out to the sidewalk, and as I did, I saw a man jump through the hedge carrying a pistol. And he angled across the street to the sidewalk and continued to run in my direction, holding his pistol. When he got almost directly across from me, I yelled at him, "Hey man, what the hell is going on?" And he had his pistol right here, and he nearly stopped, and he turned in my direction and said something, but I couldn't understand what he said. So he continued walking down Patton Street. I called to a friend of mine. I said, "Follow that guy, see where he's going."
The different routes taken by the fleeing assailant were not the only contradictions in the accounts of these key witnesses.
He was wearing a light shirt, a brown jacket, and a light gray trousers.
He was wearing a black pair of trousers, a white shirt, and either a real light tan or a light gray Eisenhower type windbreaker.
He was a short man, kind of small, and with a ruddy complexion.
He had real fair complexion, dark hair, and I found out later, the reason he had such fair complexion, that he'd killed a police officer and he was scared to death. So what it was, he was as pale as a ghost.
This man has devoted more time and energy than anyone to investigating the murder of Officer Tippit in Oak Cliff. After 12 years, researcher Larry Harris has uncovered important new evidence.
The Warren report concluded that Oswald had been walking east on 10th Street at the time he was encountered by Officer Tippit. And yet virtually all of the police, FBI, and Secret Service written reports from that weekend stated clearly that the man had been walking west on 10th Street, the opposite direction of Oswald. One of the witnesses to so state was Jim Burt, who was located on the corner of Denver and 10th Street. He sat on his front porch and stated he watched the man walking west on 10th Street up to the point where he encountered the police officer, and this is the man who did the shooting. The fact of the matter is that after 25 years, it's unclear just what transpired during the shooting here at 10th and Patton. One of the witnesses not known to the Warren Commission was a woman named Aquila Clemens, who was located in a house on the opposite side of the street. She came out immediately after the shooting and said she saw two men, one of whom was short and chunky, standing near the police car, and these men ran off in opposite directions. The bullets recovered from Tippett's body could not be traced to Oswald's revolver, nor apparently to any other revolver. There were references on the police radio tapes to an automatic weapon, 2 references. This is highly significant because Oswald was carrying a 6-shot revolver, not an automatic. According to the Warren report, Oswald continued on in a westerly direction toward the Texas Theater and was able to reverse the 6-block distance unimpeded, even though Jefferson Boulevard was swarming with police cars and bystanders searching for the suspect and closely scrutinizing any single white male that would have been walking in the area.
Okay, so we have Tippit is killed. We have captured the guy who allegedly killed him. We got a weapon on the guy who allegedly killed him. We got the bullet from Tippit that killed him, but we can't match that bullet with that weapon. We can't do that. And that's a problem for me. I just what? And you know, we don't know. I mean, he said fired 5 shots. I mean, you've got multiple bullets around the crime scene that you should be able to match to the weapon if there is a match to be had. Let me just get one thing set up with my videos here. I'll be with you in a second. And then I have to get to 6:34.
The public arena for the brutal slaying of the 35th President of the United States. 1. The surgeons did.
Okay, so you know, I have difficulty with this story. It just doesn't add up. Now, to further complicate things, where do I have it? Oh, I know what I did wrong. I have to bear with me here. Okay, and share. And okay, and then what it still troubles me is that here's North Beckley Avenue. This is where the rooming house is. And Oswald is going to the Texas Theater, which is off of Jefferson. So he has to come down Beckley to Jefferson to get over to the theater. why would he come down? And I mean, I hate doing investigation. You can always ask, why did somebody do this, not the other, not the thing that they're alleged to have done? Why didn't they do something else? It's just, I mean, that's always a kind of a problematic way to investigate something, but there's a discrepancy in the logic. Why would he come down here and then go up to 10th and Patton so that he can kill Tippit? I mean, it's not along the way. He's going out of his way, which again, if you're orchestrating this and you're going to kill a cop off in a neighborhood somewhere near where Lee Harvey Oswald was, but it's not going to be a straightforward kind of thing. You're going to throw something in that's going to be an anomaly. Setting up the murder of Tippit off in that neighborhood is a pretty good wrench to throw in the whole thing, and do it and make people think Oswald is the one who did it, but Oswald actually has nothing to do with it. Again, if I'm going to set up a patsy, I'm going to set up someone who has nothing to do with anything, so that, and then I kill him. Once they've charged him, case closed, I kill him, he's gone. There's no reason to go back and revisit anything. The case is over. Let's move on to the next thing. So it kind of fits that sort of scenario. It may not be true, but I'm just speculating. But it is. This is an awfully disconcerting anomaly that gets put into this sequence of events associated with the murder of John Kennedy. I mean, if you're going to kill a president, you may have a cop you really don't like, but why would you go out of your way to kill him? I mean, what's the point? It's just, it doesn't add up. And then the idea might be that Oswald was, slinking through the neighborhood, so he's not walking on North Beckley, that someone might have detected that he had left the building and left altogether. Of course, I don't know if anybody went back into the building to work for the rest of the day. Certainly I would have made it a crime scene. And if you were back in the building, it would have been to be interviewed. And perhaps, there could have been where we now discovered that Lee Harvey Oswald didn't come back from lunch after, the murder of Kennedy. I mean, there's so many questions that just don't seem to add up to the tale that we're told. So I still have great difficulty with this. Now, another thing I have great difficulty with is we're told that Kennedy is shot from the rear, yet the doctors in the emergency room have a whole different take on what's gone on with this shooting. Let's have a look. And emergency room doctors, it's not the first time they've seen a gunshot wound. So I got a feeling that they know their way around this event. Oh, I'm sorry, I was going to share that. I was supposed to start it. Okay. Get that going. So let's hear from the emergency.
Everything they could to revive him, despite the massive head wound observed by Dr. Robert McClelland.
It was not a small opening at all. I would estimate that probably a quarter or at least a fifth of the back right side of the skull was gone.
I stepped up and looked, and I could see inside President Kennedy's head on the right side near the back. We call it the occipital-parietal area. And the scalp had been torn apart there, and the skull had been blasted open by the effect of the high-velocity missile.
I thought it was probably an exit wound because, generally speaking, high-velocity missiles of that type will enter through a rather small opening, and by creating a blast effect and by the tumbling of the bullet, it will then, as it exits the body, leave a large hole, particularly large caliber bullets, like from a .45 or from a deer rifle or something of this sort, would cause that kind of massive exit wound.
We had taken the casket in the room in the meantime, and
so we have what the doctors are calling a massive exit wound. But so we watch the video, we see the Kennedy get shot, we see his head jerk back, we see that, well, first, before he shot, you know, we see Jackie leaning over to kind of help him as much as she can. And then he shot again. And you see his head jerk back all kind of instantaneously. Yet we're told, no, the shot came from the rear. Even though Jackie doesn't seem to be reacting as if it came from the rear. Let me get this.
In broad daylight.
Okay. Okay, so now I want to show you another video, but I want you to listen to the intro to this. And I want to highlight something to you, that as an investigator, you have people give you information. You interview them, you pull stuff out of them, you do all kinds of things, get them to talk and that kind of stuff. They may tell you what you want to hear. Then you have to question the source. At what is this a credible source? Is this someone who has an agenda? Are they providing information for something other than telling the truth? What, you know, just because I have you confessing to the crime doesn't mean that you did it. It may mean that there's something else involved. So I want you to hear this intro because it will help explain some of how I look at sources.
My God, is he really dead? I mean, who did this?
Within hours, a suspect is arrested, Lee Harvey Oswald. But 2 days later, he himself was killed.
Came out of nowhere.
That was really the origin of a lot of conspiracy thinking.
Somebody's trying to silence him.
Since that time, millions of Americans have been convinced that the assassination was not the work of one man, but a conspiracy. Can modern forensic science and ballistics crack the case?
Oh, good, we got a good trace.
For the first time, using state-of-the-art technology,
I'm interested in the distance from the knoll to say the headshot.
Nova brings together a team of experts to analyze the gun, the bullets, the crime scene,
2 shooters in the plaza,
and the medical evidence.
Physical evidence doesn't lie.
Cold Case JFK. Right now on Nova.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Here is Nova, highly acclaimed public broadcasting, putting together a program, gonna do the forensics on the bullet that killed Kennedy. And now we're gonna see these experts do this. And this program is funded by, partially funded by, the David H. Koch Foundation. fund for science, promoting public understanding of science. I'm sorry, but this is not a credible source to me. And I watched the program and I listened to, the experts tell, how they did the forensics and all of that. They still cannot connect the bullet to the weapon to the shooter. Cannot be done.
Clothing are kept. The Kennedy family has granted him access on Nova's behalf, but no cameras are allowed.
It was a real honor. It's something that I grew up with. As a boy, seeing the Zapruder film was one of the things that really fueled my interest in doing forensics. This was John F. Kennedy, and I was handling his clothing. Even though I went there for a very specific reason, a scientific reason, certainly that moment wasn't lost on me. The photographs themselves are crystal clear. The sharpness is amazing. You can get a lot of detail from them, much better than anything you can find that's publicly available.
Even so, they're not perfect. A photo intended to document the entry point is unclear, because for whatever reason, the autopsy doctors did not shave the head wound. The brain yields more information.
This is a drawing of President Kennedy's brain that was done for one of the investigative committees. We see the wound track that extends from the occipital pole, the back of the brain, the back tip of the brain, all the way up through the front of the brain.
A shot from the grassy knoll would have exited through the left side of Kennedy's brain, but that is largely undamaged. Moving on to an X-ray of Kennedy's skull, multiple fractures are evident. To Cummings, the pattern of fracture lines is a clue to the bullet's direction.
As the bullet impacts the skull, the fracture lines will radiate off from that point of impact. As that's happening, the head is also expanding from this incredible pressure wave that's occurring inside the head.
In tests at the Biophysics Laboratory, an Army research center, Carcano bullets were fired into human skulls filled with ballistic gelatin. First, the impact of a bullet entering from the rear causes fractures to radiate forward. But almost at the same instant, a pressure wave inside the gelatin causes a second wave of fractures in a perpendicular direction, just like what Cummings sees on the Kennedy X-ray.
So you have these long fractures that'll radiate out from an entry wound, and then you have these concentric fractures that happen perpendicular to the original fracture lines.
If Kennedy had been shot from the grassy knoll, the primary fracture lines would radiate backwards from the front. But the X-ray shows the opposite. They radiate forward from the rear.
Based on this fracture pattern in the skull, I think we can definitively say no, there is no shot from the side or from the front.
But there is one lingering mystery. Where exactly was the entry wound? For 50 years, confusion over its precise location has fueled controversy. The autopsy doctors said it was low. The House committee put it 4 inches higher.
Okay. And let me get this into slide. And then I have to stop. And I come back into here. And I come back. And so a journal article says that it demonstrates that a temporary cavity formed inside the president's soft tissue as the momentum and kinetic energy of the bullet smashed into his skull, causing his head to snap forward. I don't see his head snap forward. I mean, you watch the Zapruder, it clearly snaps back. So it's and mind you, the evidence that they're using is a drawing that was made by the congressional investigative staff of the brain. So that's kind of dubious in and of itself. The fact that the autopsy shows the bullet entering at one point, then it is moved up 4 inches higher, so it will meet our calculation. That is not scientific analysis to me. That is bogus. And so we'll see some more from the cold case JFK film by Nova, funded by Koch. But I'm extremely dubious about it all. So with that, Lauren, I think that's enough stuff that we can now open up for discussion and comments and what your thoughts may be about this.
Okay, let's. Okay, so we'll use the raise the hand feature and let people ask their questions. Oh, Tina has a question right away.
Yeah, Sal, with the shooting of Tippit, if the bullet that was found in his brain didn't match the pistol that Oswald was carrying, my question would be, presumably that was like a 6-shot pistol. Were all 6 bullets chambered, and did he have any additional bullets or anything in his pockets? Because if 5 shots were fired, and let's say there were 2 shooters and he was only one of, that shot 3 of the shots or something, one would expect that you would have found some empty chambers, or he would have had to reload somewhere. And where would he have reloaded if he was on this very busy street that was filled with policemen?
Yeah, that's right. It's none of that's reconciled, because remember, the investigation gets gets kind of, the investigation gets taken away from the Dallas police by the FBI, and it's case closed. They're not continuing the investigation into the circumstances surrounding the murder of Tippit. It's over. We got the guy who did it, so the case is closed. That's the purpose that I would have set forth for the project manager. Get them to say case closed and stop the investigation is what happens. So yeah, there's all kinds of, I mean, look, to me, if you can't match that bullet to his weapon, it's exculpatory. It means he didn't do it. And on top of that, we've given him a paraffin test, which says he didn't fire a weapon. So Lee Harvey Oswald, I mean, I just think if I was a defense attorney, I'd be salivating over representing him, because it's, you got a lot to introduce that speaks to his innocence.
Hey, Sal, I have a question. What about the whole reporting about the leaving the money behind and the wedding ring? And do you think that was all accurate or sort of planted information? What's your take on that?
I don't know. I think the author who's writing about this is one who I don't think is a real investigative kind of person, and so she may be fed stuff. I don't know if remember, he's only been on this job 1 week. He may, you have a lot of reasons why people would take off their wedding ring and leave it behind. the Oswald, before the assassination, he's living in this boarding house, and he's making, many of you are too young to remember this, but there used to be telephone booths everywhere. That's where you would go in and you would put money in a machine and you would dial a phone number. There was a day before we had these little phones. I know you're too young to know that, but and so he would go to a phone booth across the street from the boarding house and would make phone calls. Now, Ruth Payne says that she wanted to try to get a hold of Lee one time, and she called the boarding house, and the boarding house said, "We don't have Lee Harvey Oswald here." And so she can't locate him. She's wondering, I thought he was living in that place. And Marina said, well, yeah, sometimes he goes by an alias, right? which again is kind of what, spy kind of people do. Anyway, so, and he's seen out there though, on the phone, and he's having like contentious talks going on. It could be that he's being told to do stuff by his handler, and he's asking some questions and he's not getting good responses, and he's annoyed, and he's not sure what is it you want me to do? Well, if something happens, just go to the Texas Theater and sit in the 4th row, 3rd seat from the left. And he's a little, he's a little leery about what's going on here. So he may be having some contentious stuff going on, and he may anticipate, I'm being set up for something. Now, I don't think that, mind you, my view of the relationship with Marina is that this wasn't two people who fell in love in Minsk. He was assigned to bring her back. So he goes through he gets married to her, they have kids, but this is not some kind of real marriage. So what he does is he brings her back. He's annoyed with her. He doesn't want, he's not meant to be in, some kind of marital arrangement, but he has these kids and he cares about the kids. And he's at least, he suspects something's going on, and I'm going to at least leave what cash I got so she can kind of take care of the kids for a little while. And he just goes off and does as he's told. He's a good Marine, following orders. Give me the instructions. Yes, sir. I've given you my objections. Now you said just go do this. Yes, sir. And off he goes.
Kathleen
and mind you, I'm speculating. This whole thing is speculation, but it kind of fits a pattern for him.
Yeah, Kathleen had a comment. She says, as I recall, the brain was missing later for examination by the Warren report.
That's right. The archives they do not have Kennedy's brain. So all of this stuff that this guy is talking about with the brain is speculative. It is guesswork that's going on.
Huh. Lucretia has a question. I think her hand's up.
I wondered what kind of interviewing was done with Marina, and when was it done?
There is if you subscribe to the Mary Farrell, and I'll go look on it because I subscribe to it, the Mary Farrell Foundation, which is a repository of documents and interviews, all that kind of stuff with the Kennedy, King, and RFK assassinations. So I'll go look at that, but I don't recall anything. One concern they had, that the FBI had about Marina, was that was Russia planting women with expatriates who were going to come back as a way of infiltrating America and conducting spy operations. That was the one thing. So they interviewed her about stuff like that. But I don't know of anything more extensive than that with the relation as it related to Oswald, other than validating that the picture of him with the weapon in the backyard, that the picture actually took place and what was surrounded that and that kind of thing. But I don't know of more extensive detail, but I'll look to see if I can find some on there.
Thank you.
What other questions do we have out there? I know we have inquiring minds.
This is Frances Dunstan. I have a question about the men who were on the 5th floor who attested to having heard 3 bullet blasts and the recharge or whatever you call that in between. So they heard 3 shots coming from what they thought was above, although you did take note that the people on the street didn't see that. What do you think about their credibility?
Well, I mean, I certainly believe that they heard shots coming from there. They very well may have been shots coming from the 6th floor depository. The problem I had, they were not in a position though to be able to see who would have been up above them. It surprises me that no one would have gone out to look to find out who the hell is up there, who did that. But my bigger concern was that there are people across the street who would be able to observe what was going on out of that window, and they didn't look up into it. So I don't know. I mean, it's certainly a very unclear. It's unclear to me as to what actually has happened up there. Yeah.
We have another comment in chat. Suzanne says, Sal, were any projectiles from JFK's motorcade located? Because that could have led to the direction of where the bullets came from.
The only projectile that was recovered was the magic bullet that turns up on the gurney at Parkland Hospital, the gurney that carried JFK in. I think it was JFK. It might have been Connolly's gurney that carried him in. One of them, but that's where they got the magic bullet, and it comes out in a pristine condition, and they can't match it to the weapon. Yeah.
Tina, want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, back to the 6th floor window. Was that window open? I mean, when we saw that supposed flash of maybe a body behind the window, it appeared to me the window was closed. But if a sharpshooter needed to line up their shot, then presumably at some point the window would have had to have been opened. And somebody on the street, again, you would have seen the window being raised.
Yeah, I think the window was opened. I can't recall. I think what they showed in the film was probably more of a cutaway shot, but yeah, the window was opened. And one of the people who says that he saw people in the window on the 6th floor actually says that he could see in because the window was open, and said that he saw 2 people.
Why did they keep saying he was shot from behind when we see that video? And who shot that video? But it's so clear, not only his body motion, but the reaction of his wife, of which, that something came from the front. I'm trying to make that all make sense.
Yeah, that's the Zapruder film that captures the bullet entering Kennedy. And actually I could probably call that up if we want to look at that. Let's look at the Zapruder film again. let me get to that. It is, I have it. Where do I have it? Motorcade. Let me see if I have it right here.
Some believe a second gunman fired a fourth shot from the grassy knoll.
That's not the one.
A long, empty brown bag would be found on the 6th floor of the book depository.
Now, sorry, let me try it this way.
So what really happened that day?
No.
Just for a moment, speculate, shall
Does it want to screen share or whatever?
Let me see if I can, yeah.
He was one of the first people to see the Zapruder film, the 26-second home movie.
Okay. So I think I have it here. Share that.
Capture President Kennedy's assassination. Tonight, Dick Stoley, who now lives in Santa Fe, presented his own documentary on the subject. Here's News 13's Amanda Goodman.
It was, looking back, I think, the single most dramatic moment
over and over on media outlets around the country on this, the 50th anniversary of President John F. Kennedy's assassination. The Life magazine editor, who now lives in Santa Fe, was among the first to see the now infamous Zapruder film.
We were in a small room, no sound, this crickety old
I'm sorry, I thought I could get
projector, and he was beaming it up against the nearby white wall.
After learning of Kennedy's death, he tracked down the film after getting a tip that a local clothes maker caught the president's assassination on his home movie camera.
I'd never been to Dallas before, looked in the phone book, ran my finger down the Z's, and there it was. Zapruder, Abraham, and the phone number.
He worked out a deal with Abraham Zapruder, getting...
Sorry, I thought I could just flip to it easily, but next week I'll show you, we'll look at it again.
Yeah. Barbara, what's your question?
Well, I wondered if you could say something more about the Tippit incident, because one of the films you just showed said that a woman saw the policeman's car driving up, and then he got out of the car and somebody shot him. So I was confused about that, because obviously if they're saying it was Oswald, he couldn't have known that that cop was going to be there at that particular time. So maybe that was somebody else altogether. So I was just wondering what your perception was.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's something else was going on there. There are researchers who looked into, was Tippit involved in an extramarital affair, and could it be that the estranged husband met him on a side street and that's who shot him? There were others who looked at, could he have been a dirty cop who was involved in drug dealing, and he was meeting, remember, this is in a residential neighborhood where this happens. So is he meeting with someone over there and something goes bad and he gets shot? The researchers say they doubt it was an extramarital affair, because Tippit was working second jobs. He was, kind of really pretty busy on different things. So probably didn't have time to have an affair. No indication that he might have been involved in drug dealing. So it remains a very sketchy deal. And
well,
why would Oswald go to find him along there? The only thing that would fit the story, as we've been told, is that Oswald is staying off of the Bleckley just so that in case police come looking for him, and he's going to take this neighborhood streets to somehow get down to Jefferson to get over to the Texas Theater. But if he's going to be walking over to the Texas Theater, he's going to be on a main street. So that whole scenario doesn't play for me, But,
Yeah,
yeah,
they may have thought they've got this guy already for killing Kennedy, so they might as well say that he killed Tippit too. That would kind of make a nice little package.
Well, the only thing I would say is that if it's an assassination, if I'm planning if I'm the project manager, I might set up to have a cop killed because it's going to disrupt the whole investigation. It's going to really terrorize the police department, because the police department now feels it's all out of our control. Remember, they had an incident with Adlai Stevenson just a couple of weeks before, and they were embarrassed by it. So now if there's a murder of the president, they don't really know where it's coming from. Then there's a cop killed. Again, it's like chaos. So it throws more chaos into a chaotic situation, which means that for me, if I'm orchestrating an assassination, I'm the one who's controlling everything that happens. And the police are reacting to what I do. And what I want them to do is be totally confused. Then I want to hand them a suspect so they can say, we got it solved. And then I want to kill the suspect so it can unravel. And then the case is closed.
Well, maybe that if this was just an incidental occurrence, the people who were, as you say, orchestrating the situation thought, we can use this. We'll just say that was Oswald too.
Right. Sure.
Crazy.
Hey, Tom, what do you have?
Sal, to kind of support your hypotheses of what's going on, one other thing that you want to take a look at is that the itinerary of the president is extremely close hold. Only the Secret Service and probably his very close staff are made aware of his itinerary, especially for travel events. So for Oswald to have had time to prepare his arrangement for his alleged assassination would have been very, very short time period, because no one except when the press releases occurred did they know that he was coming. I don't know exactly when the press releases were issued, so there could have been some time, but my suggestion only is that it's close hold. Only the Secret Service detail to the president is privy to his travel itinerary. Secondly, based on a comment from one of your students before, was that in Oswald's case on this pistol, and you were talking about a 6-shot revolver and the ammunition and so forth, just as a side issue, at that time, there were many 5-round revolvers, not necessarily a 6-round revolver. So just some thoughts for your.
Yeah, again, if this was if you take my theory that it's a sophisticated assassination and it's put together at the highest levels of government have authorized it. Let's say the former head of the CIA, the head of the FBI, and Curtis LeMay. If they're the authorizing group and they've given it to someone who is a high-level project manager who orchestrates assassinations, they would have had a plan to how to kill Kennedy at wherever the opportunity emerged. It may have emerged in Chicago. It may have emerged in Tampa. It may have emerged in Dallas or other places. And that when Dallas comes about, all the pieces come together, and they have people they can call upon and pull together to make it happen. That's purely theoretical, purely speculative. What I'm arguing is that when you look at the circumstances that we know, it feeds into that kind of a narrative. Yeah.
Well, the only other thing I would add to that is that like I said before, the Secret Service is the ones that are going to know it. Now, that doesn't mean the chief of staff or someone else in the bureaucracy communicates that outside, especially to the senior level people like the CIA and so forth.
Right.
So that's not saying they would not have it, but the public would not have it. And that was the key
Right.
as far as Oswald was concerned.
Right. Right. Right.
Point. Who else has some questions? I think you just blow over everybody every week, Sal, and they just don't even know what to say.
Well, it's unusual stuff, and